So tell us what the justices were discussing, what they seem to be focusing on in this case.
They seem to be focusing on one part of the Arizona law that requires police to check the immigration papers of anyone they stop if they think that person may not have a right to be in the United States. This is maybe the most important or the most widely noted part of the law, and the justices asked a lot of skeptical questions about that, or actually they suggested that they didn't see much merit in the government's argument that this was interfering with federal priorities. On the contrary, they suggested that maybe it's just a normal part of business to do that, and there may not be anything wrong with requiring the state police to do that.
And they seem to be not understanding the legal distinction between allowing the ad hoc checking of a person's immigration status. So that's sort of the main point that they've been focusing on throughout these hearings.
That's right. In other words, they said in the normal course of business in any state, a policeman might wonder whether a person is in the country illegally, and existing procedures allow a state police or local police official to check with the federal government about a person's immigration status. And that's done sort of on an ad hoc basis across the country. And what Arizona has done is codified that into a law saying you must check the immigration status of a person you stop on the street if you have suspicion about their right to be in the United States. So the justices said, what's the difference between having that as an optional thing for police to do and requiring the state police to do it?
Can you briefly detail what are some of the other provisions are in the law and tell us whether or not the justices seem to be focusing on those aspects as well?
Right. One of the other parts of the law, for example, says it's illegal for a person who's not entitled to work in the United States, someone who does not have a work permit, it's illegal for that person in Arizona to try to get a job. And that's maybe also a controversial provision to essentially criminalize looking for a job for certain people. But the justices didn't ask too many questions about that provision or the others. They really seemed interested in this sort of stop and check part of the law.
And obviously, like the healthcare law that recently went before the Supreme Court, this law has a very sort of controversial or very hotly disputed political bent to it, especially as we head into the election year. Is that coming across in any of the deliberations today, or is that obviously a backdrop to this case?
It's a backdrop to the case. One interesting thing is that even some of the liberal justices seem to suggest that they might have some sympathy for this one part of the law. So it wasn't quite as ideologically divided as the healthcare arguments, where you really saw all the four liberal justices on one side and the conservatives generally on the other side, with a few wavering questions from Justice Kennedy. That was the healthcare case. In this case, it was a little more ideologically mixed. And it seemed that it might not necessarily be a 5-4 decision. Maybe there would be 7 or 8 justices on one side of a particular question, but it's too early to say for sure.